No, they have not. And I'm saddened today because I was talking to the survivors. There was so much anticipation for today. They thought finally they are being seen, they're being heard, we're going to have a release. This morning, when the Deputy Attorney General went on television and said he's going to release hundreds of thousands of documents, not the whole thing, Thomas Massie and I texted each other, and we said we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. We're not as concerned about having the full release. As long as they're complying with the spirit of the law, at least they're going to release something. But then we saw the documents filled with blanket redactions. Documents that judges had ordered to be released, they had blanked out. There's no draft indictment there that actually has the names of other men who may be implicated in the abuse. There's not the prosecution's original memo that we wanted to see released. There are none of the files on Epstein's computer. And we do not know then who these other rich and powerful men were who abused these survivors. And we know from the survivors and the survivors' lawyers that that information is in the files. So this is deeply disappointing. They have not complied with the law, and we're going to continue to fight to make sure they do. John, they could have had a conversation with me and Thomas Massie, but if they didn't feel like they owed us that conversation, they should have at least had a conversation with the survivors or the survivors' lawyers and listen to what they know are in those files. If they had just released the prosecution memo, which was prepared for the Florida trial, an 80-page document, and the draft indictment, we would have a lot more information about who was part of this abuse and how Epstein made his money. If they just released some of the files on the computers, we'd have a lot more information. And that's what Massie and I said, look, they should have done this months ago. We understand it was rushed. We weren't there saying in the morning, okay, just because they're not releasing everything, we're going to go after them. We thought, okay, they're complying with the date. Let's see what they do. But when it came out that we have no new information about the rich and powerful men who abused these young girls and who should be held accountable, we have no information about who these people are who were engaged in the cover-up, that's when we drew the line. And you know what? The survivors, I just talked to some of them today, they're ready to come back to the Capitol. People say, what are the consequences? There are only two things that have moved this bill. And that's the two press conferences of the survivors. It wasn't Massie, it wasn't me, it wasn't Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene showed courage. It was those survivors. And that's when the country started paying attention. And I've talked to them. They're ready to come back in January. And so this thing is not over until those documents get released. I don't know what the president has said, but what I do know is that his production violates the spirit of the law, and it violates the letter of the law, and it's a slap in the face of survivors. And so, look, they have underestimated this issue for 6 months. I don't get it. Just release the files, get it over with. The president can talk about affordability and the economy. They're the ones who continue to play these games that make this a bigger and bigger issue. And Congress is talking about possible impeachment. They're talking about inherent contempt for the Attorney General or Deputy Attorney General. Any Justice Department official who has obstructed justice could face prosecution in this administration or a future administration. And the last word, like I said, is going to be the survivors. Americans don't trust politicians that much. They trust those women. And they are going to be back on the Hill, and the country will hear from them.